7:35 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination was observed yesterday, March 21st. This year, the United Nations said the 2022 edition of the International Day focuses on the theme Voices for Action Against Racism. And there's a lot of information in relation to that. I have a long introduction to read, which I won't, because we want to get straight to the issue with our guest, Mr. Haran Ramkaransingh. He's the Director of Legal Services at the Equal Opportunities Commission. And Mr. Ramkaransingh, very good morning to you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Good morning, Kazir.
Yep, good to have you with us, and thanks so much for taking the time to give us a perspective on this. What is your perspective? If we talk about International Day International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discriminations, Voices for Action Against Racism, what does that mean in real terms to you in your capacity at the EOC?
Well, it is something we aspire towards. I don't know if ever human society, we would ever be able to achieve it, but I think it's something that we work towards, that we aspire towards, and we hold as an ideal. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, our national anthem says, "Every creed and race shall find an equal place, and God bless our nation." So that the concept of equality is something that's near and dear to our hearts as Trinidadians. The thinking behind racial discrimination, and we're hoping to educate people, is that, let's just say you're an employer, but you say you're only going to hire people of a certain race, or let's just even take it further, say people of a certain gender, people of a certain religion, people of a certain whatever. Then you are limiting yourself. You're denying yourself the best pool of talent available. You're denying yourself from finding somebody who may be competent, who may be fit, who might be appropriate for the job. So in other words, they think, one should look beyond a person's race. In other words, one should assess a person based on their merit and their ability, their qualities, their experience, that sort of thing, as opposed to saying, I prefer you because you are East Indian, I prefer you because you're African, So this is something, but it is really something that exists in our minds, and it's really a mindset, because there's no reason, there's nothing prescribed anywhere in any written law, for that matter, that says that you must hire, or you must promote, or you must transfer, or only people of this race are to be preferred over that race. There's nothing like that. So that is really a question of our mindset, and it's really a question of changing our mindsets and our attitudes.
And in relation to the actual day itself, does the EOC do anything specific? And I know we're all limited by the COVID-19 situation. Is there like any ongoing effort of public awareness in relation to these very same issues that you talk about?
Well, there's nothing specific for the day itself, because we are really involved in a lot of public education and awareness. Within the recent past, for example, we've had the International Day for International Women's Day, for example. Then recently we have, the International Day commemorating persons with Down syndrome. The EOC's mandate is not specifically limited only to race. So that, for example, we deal with discrimination on the basis of sex, on the basis of disability, for example, Down syndrome. So that we don't have any specific activities only for this day. All of our activities are geared towards raising awareness about equality and discrimination. Of course, on each day, we would like to focus more on on the issue of that particular day. But as I pointed out, in the recent past, you had International Women's Day. Then recently, just over the last few days, you had the Down syndrome, the days commemorating Down syndrome, where you wear multicolored socks. So that we try to raise awareness about all of these issues. We've been engaging in a lot of public education. For example, what I'm doing right now is a form of public education. We have our regular weekly article in a newspaper. So we've been doing a lot of activities geared towards informing the public of Trinidad and Tobago about issues about discrimination and equality.
And just on this point, Mr. Ramkaransingh, I mean, the issue of race and racial bias, it just seems so ingrained. When you just gave the analogy at the start of our discussion about choosing people who may be eminently qualified, but they don't look like you. They do not have the same faith, and people might say, well, me really care how qualified you are now. I only hiring Indians here, and there's nothing you could do about that. How do you, or vice versa, of African descent or whatever? How do you even begin a conversation or to change people's attitudes to understand that equal opportunity means just that, equal opportunity when it comes to a matter of race?
Well, well, you look at it from 2 points of view. You look at it from a preventative point of view, where it's just, as you correctly said, you try to engage in a wider national conversation. So, for example, a question we always throw out to the person is, let's just say, use your example. A person of East Indian origin says, "I'm only hiring Indians." Would they like to go to a job application, for example, or have some application before, just using an example, before a bank, an insurance company, and there are persons inside of there who might be of the other race, who may be, say, African origin, and they say, well, we're only giving these to persons of African origin. If you, who are discriminating against other races, would you in other words, put yourself in the reverse situation? Would you like that treatment to happen to you? And everybody will tell you no. As Trinidad, we have a famous saying, "Do so, don't like so." So you might be doing it, but you don't want it to happen to you. So that is a preventative aspect. But there's a second aspect of what we do, and that is treating with complaints of discrimination. So let's just say, using that same example, a person applies for that job and they were denied that job because of their race. Then it's incumbent upon that person to lodge a complaint with us. And we are empowered to receive the complaint, investigate it, conciliate it, as the case might be. And sometimes it might just be, as much as you might want to have a conversation with the person, it might just be when they're on the receiving end of the big stick, from being sanctioned, as it were, for their actions. Maybe then it might sink into them. As much as you might try, as they say, again, another Trinidadian expression, who don't hear will feel. So that if the person cannot be reasoned with through a conversation, maybe they just have to feel the along the law.
And as far as that is concerned, because I'm sure even yourself as a legal officer, you would prefer not to have to prosecute matters like this.
Yes.
That there would be
Yes.
a willingness to discuss and to bring people around to understanding the whole idea of fairness and equality and so on. But from your own practice, from your own experience at the EOC, are you seeing that willingness, or are there still battle lines being drawn?
Yes and no. I mean, we're seeing that more people are aware of who we are and are aware of what we do. I mean, so for example, talking about public education, we're getting a lot of requests by organizations, by business groups, by people to come in and do training sessions, which we do free of charge. But at the same time, there are certain societal beliefs that people have, and that's ingrained in them. And it is difficult to really change somebody's deeply held opinion. Things can only happen over time through education, I think, and through social interaction. It might just be, and I'm just throwing out an example, you feel this way or you think this way because perhaps you grew up in a family network, or where these values, good and bad, were probably ingrained into you. But hopefully through yourself coming out and going into the wider world, you might begin to think differently. So a lot of it has to do with, I think that there is a need for greater dialogue, and as part of the dialogue, you need to be sympathetic to person's beliefs. So if you come with with a morally high-handed approach, you are right, you are wrong because your beliefs are backward and stupid and that sort of thing. You become very judgmental. Then you're likely to lose the person in that conversation. Because you feel like that person feels like these beliefs, which I knew and I grew up with in my family and group, as it were, are being attacked. So it's really a question of how do you go about changing these beliefs,
And finally, Mr. Ramkaransingh, and we appreciate
Yes.
you taking the time. I know it might have been a bit of a rush for you to join us this morning, but we appreciate you taking the time. Just in the context of the 2022 edition, as far as highlighting public discourse and creating safe spaces for public dialogue, how do you see the EOC's role in that regard as a final thought?
Well, part of the EOC's role, I mean, I mentioned we receive complaints, so that's our bread and butter rule, as you might call it, but we also have other rules. For example, one of our statutory mandates is to work towards the elimination of discrimination, so that so that we do see ourselves as having a role in a wider national conversation and perhaps facilitating this discussion however we can. Like all government agencies, we are plagued by limited resources, so we have to make as much as we can with as little as we have. So, but I do believe that yes, we do have a role in trying to facilitate this discussion and to see how far it can go. I don't think the EOC alone can do this discussion. Well, in order to perhaps have this discussion, you may need to bring in other groups because, again, if we alone speak about it, then it would come across as, oh, well, this is just a small niche group speaking about it. You would need to perhaps galvanize wider civil society organizations, into this national discussion. But I do think, yes, it is part of our role, and it's something that we would like to do going forward with our limited resources.
And squeezing finally, very quickly, the whole observance of World Down Syndrome Day, for example, which was also yesterday. Would you identify that as an example of advocacy working in the right direction when we talk about issues related to awareness concerning Down syndrome?
Well, yes. I mean, many people, for example, know that they just associate it as a day of wearing colored socks. But that is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, persons who are what you might call hardcore advocates might say, well, no, it's more than just colored socks. And yes, we agree with you, but sometimes it's about creating mind space, you know that, for example, yesterday is the day you wear colored socks, and maybe it might inspire you to perhaps go and inquire some more. What are we celebrating? What is the rationale behind the colored socks? I mean, there's actually a specific rationale behind the use of multicolored socks and not matching socks. I mean, and as a matter of fact, I'm not going to say what it is. I'm going to actually ask your viewers to perhaps go and Google it and find out why it is specifically on that day you do that. So I do see it as a means of creating mind space and awareness that perhaps can be used to create a deeper awareness. In other words, if you're not, it's basically like, say, for want of a better word, as vacuous as this may sound, like an advertising campaign. You just have to have your brand out there, and that will perhaps inspire people to find out more about it. So I think, yes, the use of the mismatched socks, it is a good way of getting people aware about the day.
Mr. Ramkaransingh, we want to thank you very much indeed for taking the time to be with us this morning.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for having us.
You're more than welcome, Mr. Haran Ramkaransingh, Director of Legal Services at the EOC. And as he talked about that, wearing mismatched socks to raise that awareness is the same as taking a knee. Many people have asked, what's the point in taking a knee? Nobody taking it on again. But when you do take a knee in any sporting event, people might ask the question, why are they doing that? It's to raise awareness about discrimination and racism in the wider world. That's why it is still encouraged. 7:47 in Trinidad and Tobago. Here's an image of Paria Falls to take us to the break. Now that is an idyllic image, if ever there was one, when you talk about just feeling relaxed and restful on this Tuesday morning. We have one more interview to come right after this.